Let's look ahead then to Chelsea on Monday, the SW6 derby. Now, Peter, his phone is off the hook. He's been declining calls all the time, so he's going to go in a second. But we thought just before we let you go, we were holding you hostage, but we won't let you go until you give us 1 minute on Chelsea-Fulham and why Fulham are going to win.
Because Chelsea seems to be a bunch of lemons at the moment. There's a reference there with Pochettino's lemons, and very interesting. Well, he has lemons on his desk, but he was talking about that in a press conference. So it's not going well for the other team in SW6. They have, in short, they've completely changed their squad, brought in a load of young players who aren't really used to the Premier League. A few of them have got injured, and lo and behold, they're not winning games. I think the last time Chelsea beat a team in the top 10, this is going to jinx it now, isn't it? Was back in 2022. Was it January 2022? No,
yeah, I think so.
Maybe it is that long. I think it is that long.
I think it is. It was it was Spurs, wasn't it?
Yeah, which is absolutely insane for a club of Chelsea size to go that long without beating a team in the top 10 on the day of the actual game. Of course, Fulham are they being 10th? That's technically top 10, right?
11th,
we're 11th,
and also everyone plays this weekend.
Okay,
so I'd imagine
I was fine. Just let's talk about this bit a bit more then. But yeah, even so, that kind of sums up where they are at the moment. Lots of change. They've obviously got a very, very talented squad. And I think the win over Brighton is probably something they kind of needed, to be honest, because of the negativity that sort of been spiraling around their club. They have not been able to score goals. So that hopefully it won't be a 0-0, but that's been part of their issue. But they're a very it's set up for Fulham to do well. Monday night, it's an opportunity to show where the team are at for Fulham to finally click, I think, in front of goal in the final third. And it is quite something that Fulham go into this game above Chelsea again in the table. And now it's just about see if they can do that really sort of unprecedented thing of back-to-back home wins over Chelsea, and it's possible.
Right, Jack, let's get your thoughts on it then. Chelsea on Monday, and there's going to be no Malagusto, there's no Nicholas Jackson, they're both suspended. Chelsea got lots of injuries, but you still look at the squad and you're like, okay, there are still some good players here who on their day can deliver. Like it's so odd, isn't it? Because you're like, we're going into this game as favourites, they're an absolute mess. They'd be bottom of the league if the season had started on the 1st of January and you exclude the 3 teams that did go down and the 3 teams that came up, and they'd be about 20, about 4 or 5 points, I think, off the team that would be above them, which I think is Everton. It's incredible, the drop-off that they've had recently. And, logic dictates that it won't last forever.
No. Leicester have scored more goals in 2023 in the Premier League, and Leicester were relegated in May. And that's a pretty wild statistic, I think, to be thrown around. Look, they were much improved, especially in the second half against Brighton, and it did seem like that goal took the weight off the shoulders. Now, there's also the fact that after the game yesterday, Pochettino said that Ben Chilwell has a hamstring strain. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on through the thing. But it does feel like it's like one disaster after another. It feels like it's lurching from, pillar to post in many ways. I'd imagine that Reece James isn't going to be back. Obviously, he's stepped up his training programme, but even still, he has a charge to answer from the FA on abusing match officials in the tunnel. So even if he was to be back from injury, I wonder if he's about to be hit with a suspension as well. Well, I was impressed. Now, I went back and watched the game from last night, this morning, and I was impressed with Cole Palmer, who I thought was absolutely excellent, and Mudryk is improving. These are the kind of things that you kind of pick up on immediately. Mudryk is starting to make things happen. He's starting to try roasting right backs. Now, good luck trying that with Kenny Tete, as you'd imagine. But equally, you don't want to see that kind of player kicking into gear ahead of you coming up against this lot. There's still question marks, and relatively big question marks, I think, over this team, how they set up. I'm still not convinced by what Pochettino has done in terms of the formations since pre-season. He played the entire pre-season in a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, and then kind of switched and went 3 at the back for the kick-off of the Premier League season and hasn't looked back despite the fact that results have gone downhill. So there remain question marks, but I do think they are improving and they are going to get better. So this is a good time, I think, if any, to play them. It would have been better 2 weeks ago, obviously, but it'd be good to get them and just not. If it was amazing to knock them back into the abyss, which they just think they've put one hand on, the ledge and trying to climb out of. To be able to just stamp on that hand would be a real nice moment, I think. And there are ways that you can get at this side. Like Brighton had joy in the first half. We've seen other teams have joy against this Chelsea side. They are not infallible. Their back line remains gettable at, especially I think Thiago Silva's drop off so far this season. Now, if I've said that, so he'll almost undoubtedly have an absolute stormer against us. But there is that element of uncertainty around this back line that I think can be exploited. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Pochettino shuffles his deck to try and deal with the threat that Fulham pose, especially at right back, where you'd imagine they're going to be coming up against Willian, who, has the potential, and yesterday I thought was his best performance in a Fulham shirt this season. You have that kind of feel that you're like, okay, if he's getting back to form, the last thing in the world you want is a stand-in right back coming up against him when he's able to just shift the ball out of his feet and manipulate the ball so well. That's where I think it's going to be a very interesting battle.
Yeah, fascinating to see what they do at right back. Obviously, that is somewhere where Moises Caicedo has played, so they could put Caicedo at right back, or they could put Cucurella on the wrong side. Yeah. And then up front, I guess Armando Broja.
Yeah, although I thought it was interesting that the minutes he got yesterday were limited. I thought that they might give him the first 45 and see how he fared. But yeah, it does seem that way. I suppose Raheem Sterling can play through the middle. There's that to probably consider as well, although whether that's the right move in a game like this or not is a different question. But yeah, it does feel like there are major holes right now in this squad. Sometimes that can be a good thing, right? Because players suddenly get thrown in, they're like, okay, the pressure's off because I'm playing in an unfamiliar position, and suddenly they hit a gold mine of form. We just have to kind of hope that doesn't matter. I think key is not, the way that the bridge lifted yesterday when they scored, and the players visibly looked like a weight had been taken off their shoulders, frustrate this team, and their fans will get annoyed. They will expect an element of revenge after losing at the Cottage last season. And I think that there is that kind of sense that if you can get at this Chelsea team and put them on the back foot, there is still the grumbles of discontent murmuring in the background that you can exploit and get those fans feeling frustrated and not wanting to get behind them. If you let Chelsea score early, I think that someone is going to get pasted, and I just really, really hope that it's not us.
Yeah, from an outside perspective as well, when you saw Nkunku get injured in pre-season, because he caused us a lot of problems. I think he played in that pre-season match, didn't he, against us? And he certainly looked very good in pre-season anyway. And so I think when he got injured, he suddenly realised that the wheels might fall off for Chelsea, but never to this extent. I remember seeing what they did in the summer, all the signings, all the money. Pochettino, I was like, okay, yeah, we've had one bad season of Chelsea. We're not going to get another vintage Chelsea rotten season. And Pochettino is probably the kind of manager that can turn this around. It only takes 2 or 3 wins in consecutive on the bounce to get out of the position they're in. But it is quite astonishing. And as you mentioned, I've certainly heard good things about Cole Palmer's brief appearances that he's made for Chelsea. Jack, just from a game point of view, I feel like this is going to be tight, though. You've got two teams struggling to score goals. It was 0-0 at the Bridge last year. It was a tight game, the one that we won 2-1 at the Cottage. So I'm not expecting much more than a goal or two in this game. It's going to be nervy, intense, and just basically who can get that first goal feels like absolutely critical in this one.
Yeah, the first goal is usually important, but in a game between two teams who have struggled to find the back of the net this season, I think that becomes ever more present, right? And so, it also is about the mood of things. And, I kind of referenced it there, but I think that equally it can roll for the home support as well. You'd imagine it's going to be incredibly loud on Monday night to begin with. But an early goal can quieten stadiums. And that's the last thing that you need when you're trying to roll into a bit of form. Obviously a couple of good results in a row now for Fulham. And you're thinking, okay, can we use this as a springboard? We're starting to see a few players hit a little bit of form, hit a little bit of a vibe. Can you keep that rolling? And the last thing you need at that point is to concede an early goal. It really is important here, in order to calm this one down. And either, I'm not even saying score early, although I think that you could really hurt Chelsea's bounce back emotion by doing so. I think just settle this one out for the first 15 minutes, make sure you don't concede, and then start to grow into it and allow those fears to start to prey on them, that they might not be on the path to redemption that they feel they're on after last night.